Good morning. We have some exciting news today. The very fabulous Corey Freyer of the Consumer Federation of America will be joining us as our guest today. And he is going to predict for us essentially whether the Democrats and Republicans in Congress are going to cave on the ridiculous crypto bill and allow Donald Trump and his family to further profit off the backs of the American people and use this office of public trust for which Donald Trump should have a fiduciary duty to the American people to line his own pockets. Yes, he'll do that anyway, but we certainly do not need to boost him and lift him up so he can climb even higher into the perch where he will hope from which he will hopefully fall. Which brings me to this. When I say I hope Donald Trump falls from his perch, I mean that metaphorically. I have no interest in seeing the man climb high up onto a tower of a building and plummet. That is not my desire, right? These are words that I'm using to describe the difference between a metaphor and a literal expression of a threat. But welcome to America Today, where we have breaking news that yes, the former FBI director, James Comey, is now in the same position that my dear friend Kathy Griffin was when she held up a bloody mask of Donald Trump and then was visited by the Secret Service. And no, James Comey was not trying to do a comedy bit, but instead, what Comey did was simply, and I don't even know how to describe this, but he was simply taking a walk on the beach and apparently came upon something as simple as a shell formation. And I want to share this with you so you can see what James Comey was looking at and why he is being investigated and threats of jailing him. Again, this country doesn't apparently care about the First Amendment or due process when it's yours and my First Amendment rights and due process. Not so for Donald Trump and the friends of his regime. So let's take a look at this particular situation here. And I thought that I had this uploaded, but I seem to be having some trouble getting my Comey. There it is. Here we go. Let's bring it up on stage. So here's the situation. James Comey was walking down the beach and saw this shell formation. And as you can see, it says 8647. And 47 is the number we associate with Donald Trump's second presidency. He's the 47th president of the United States, or serving in the 47th term of a president of the United States. But what with 86? Now, for me, 86 has always meant kill someone, right? But that is not actually the case, and it's not what James Comey thought when he saw this. Apparently, he thought 86 meant like nix or get rid of. And I spoke to my family this morning, Michael and my youngest child, and they both associated 86 with restaurant lingo, namely that 86 is something waiters use or people in bars use to say this customer needs to leave. 86 in a restaurant means that you essentially, are out of an item and you need to 86 that item off the menu. So that seems to be what a lot of people think when they hear 86. And indeed, Michael sent to me, I thought he texted to me this morning a screenshot of this. There it is. There is a photo that he texted to me from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, and I'm reading it to you right now. 86 is slang meaning to throw out, to get rid of, or to refuse service to. It comes from 1930s soda counter slang, meaning that an item was sold out. There is varying anecdotal evidence about why the term 86 was used, but the most common theory is that it's rhyming slang for Knicks. So 86 rhymes with Knicks. My child added, that sounds a little bit like those Cockney rhymes. When you say the words in England, if you're from East London, you might say apples and pears, and that is Cockney for stairs. Trouble and strife, that's Cockney for wife. You see where this is going? So anyhow, let's get back to why this is a fucking national emergency. This is what Comey put up. So then what happens next? We get FBI Director Kash Patel freaking the fuck out, saying, we are aware of the recent social media post by former FBI Director James Comey directed at President Trump. We are in communication with the Secret Service and Director Curran. Primary jurisdiction is with SS. No, don't say SS. Say USSS. SS reminds us too much of the Nazis, bud. So primary jurisdiction is within the U.S. Secret Service on these matters, and we, the FBI, will provide all necessary support. And then in a different tweet, and I'm going to get out of the way so you can see this, he shows you Comey's original tweet, and you can see Comey at the top, and below it says James Comey shared. So it says Comey, cool shell formation on my beach walk. Now, Comey, realizing that this shell formation on his beach walk had caused a stir, took down the tweet. But is it over? Of course not. We now literally have, Tulsi Gabbard going on Fox News and saying as follows.
If Comey should be in jail.
I do. Any other person with the position of influence that he has, people who take very seriously what a guy of his stature, his experience, and what the propaganda media has built him up to be, I'm very concerned for the president's life. We've already seen assassination attempts. I'm very concerned for his life. And James Comey, in my view, should be held accountable and put behind bars for this.
Direct.
Okay. First of all, put behind bars for what? For what, honey? What? What is the crime for which you can put someone behind bars? And what is the due process? Should there not be a trial? Should there not, if this is a federal crime, if she's claiming that this is a threat made on the president's life, then there need to be charges. There needs to be a grand jury indictment. I'm not suggesting they do this, and a complaint, and he needs the opportunity to get all those due process rights that any other American had. And it does not bode well as a legal matter, but it sure as hell is an opportunity for Donald Trump and his team to once again play the victim. Okay, so now, guys, I want to go on to our next topic of the day, and it feels like today is almost entirely crazy town. But what I want to share with you is what happened at the U.S. Supreme Court yesterday. And it was one of the most amazing oral arguments I have ever heard, and I have listened to many of them. Now, remember, there are no videos, right? You cannot see what the justices look like. I have actually been in person, I think only to 3, but those are equally compelling. In this instance, this is the case that the Trump administration brought up to the United Supreme Court, tangentially related to Donald Trump's unconstitutional executive order to try to redefine birthright citizenship to not include people who are born in the United States to those who are undocumented immigrants who are non-citizens of the United States. I'm keeping this simple, but he had this executive order that he issued right away upon becoming president, and it would go into effect, they said, in 30 days. Almost immediately, cases were brought, and at least 3, it may have been 4 different federal judges issued nationwide injunctions to put this on hold. And when I say this, the parts of the executive order on hold, specifically including that they could not do anything to further this. So they can't plan it anymore. They cannot suddenly go into put guidance at hospitals saying these kids who are born here need to have their mothers show their citizens. Nothing could be put in place. They couldn't start denying Social Security numbers to newborn babies on suspicion that their parents were not citizens of the United States. Okay, so I'm keeping this simple, but right. So that happened, and they keep losing in terms of getting these nationwide injunctions blocking this law. So instead of asking the Supreme Court to hear on the merits the question of whether their theory that the 14th Amendment doesn't say what it does, or their theory that Wong Kim Ark, the case from, I want to say, 1886 or 1898, basically more than 100 years ago, that this case that has been law that held that the 14th Amendment did apply to a child born in the United States whose parents were Chinese nationals, were that case was no longer law, right? So we've got a long-standing precedent that the Trump administration was ignoring in the executive order. The executive order is put on hold nationwide. But instead of actually asking the Supreme Court to hear this on the merits, to see whether their theory was good or bad, instead, what the Trump administration did is only go to the Supreme Court with a question they thought would be very amenable to the justices, which is whether a single district court judge in one of the, I think it's 94 districts in the United States, can a single federal court judge, could be 93, Corey can correct me, can a single district court judge, upon hearing, upon a case being filed, before the case is heard, issue, or even after the case is fully heard, can a single court judge issue a nationwide injunction that would bind a defendant across the entire country? And the reason why they thought this would be an argument that they could easily win, the Trump administration, is because it turns out the justices don't like nationwide injunctions. And a lot of us don't always like nationwide injunctions because they apply regardless of who the president is, regardless of what party he, or maybe one day she or they, belong to. And so this idea is that presidents have been issuing a ton of executive orders, and someone can run into court. In the case of an executive order issued by Joe Biden, it might be, let's bring this case to challenge it in Judge Kasmerick's district in Texas, where he's the only judge in that district. So you pretty much know in the lottery of which judge will get your case, it will be him. And maybe you can get your nationwide injunction. And Donald Trump feels the same way, beleaguered by all these injunctions against his executive orders. And this goes back, this happened under Biden, under the first Trump administration, under Obama. So you can see why they thought this would be an easy case. But in fact, it was not. And so I want to highlight for you what I thought, and I've got the sound here, what I thought were some of the best examples here of what went down. And I think the easiest way to do this is to bring in for you, and I think if I can do this the right way, what I wanted to share with you was what happened on NPR. So I have pictures of the justices, and I want to try to align them for you with this audio. It's a very brief audio, but it's going to give you the highlights of this case. Now, before I do that, I want to give you my overview, which is, whoa. The Solicitor General, John Sauer, who was appointed by Donald Trump and was one of his former lawyers, really stepped in it yesterday. It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was his fault. It's just that he has really bad arguments. And the justices, for the most part, did not agree with him. And I would say for the most part, I think there are 5 justices who would resist what he is asking for, which would be to undo these particular nationwide injunctions. I can't fully predict for you how they're going to thread this needle. That will be for another day because we have Corey Freyer, as mentioned, joining us at the top of the hour. But I promise I will. But let's listen. I want you to hear, and these are the best excerpts for sure. I listened to a good chunk of the oral argument, and I think they have nailed it here. So I think what I need to do, let me just share this screen. And I want to make sure you can hear this. One of my mods can let me know when you can hear it. And then I can put up the pictures of the justices or John Sauer who are talking so that you know what is going on. Let's see if we can do this. I think I can. Okay. So I'm sharing my screen. And what if I also, okay, nope, that didn't work. I'm sharing my screen, but I also want to add, oh, I think I can do this. Guys, I promise you, this is a crazy tech thing. Well, you know what? Let's just listen to this and I'll just tell you who the justices are if this does not work. So let's go back to screen share and I will just play this for you for now and we'll see how we do. Okay, I think that you can see that now. Great. And let's go.
This message comes from Subaru.
Sorry.
As part of their Subaru Loves the Earth initiative, they have partnered with the Arbor Day Foundation and will distribute over 100,000 trees this year, growing greener, healthier communities.
Can you hear still, guys? Right now, Jason, can you still hear? Sorry, guys. This is not what I wanted to do. Oh, sorry, guys. Um, oh, sorry, no audio. Okay. Can you hear now? Sorry, guys. I'm going to try it again. I did not mean that. Here we go. And share screen. Here we go.
That the text of the 14th Amendment, enacted after the Civil
Are you hearing
War,
it now?
says that all babies born in the United States are automatically U.S. citizens. Undaunted, Trump, on his first day in office this year, issued an executive order declaring that the children of parents who entered the U.S. illegally or on a temporary visa are not entitled to automatic citizenship. Immigrant rights groups and 22 states sued, and 3 different federal district court judges invalidated Trump's order, issuing what are called universal injunctions that bar the administration from enforcing the Trump policy anywhere in the country. When the courts of appeal refused to intervene while the litigation proceeded, the Trump administration appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, asking that it block the universal injunctions. The administration asserted that single judges should not have such broad authority. So today, the court heard emergency arguments in the case. The court's conservatives didn't entirely tip their hands. While some of them have called for the abolition of these nationwide injunctions in the past, today they didn't seem so certain, especially after Solicitor General John Sauer opened his argument insisting Trump is right in saying the 14th Amendment has been wrongly interpreted for 127 years.
This order reflects the original meaning of the 14th Amendment, which guaranteed citizenship to the children of former slaves, not to illegal aliens or temporary visitors.
He went on to say that the judges who temporarily barred the enforcement of Trump's policy exceeded their authority under the Constitution. Justice Sotomayor posed this question: if a new president decided to seize all guns in the country, would
we and the courts have to sit back and wait until every plaintiff whose gun is taken comes into court?
Justice Kagan followed up, posing this question to Sauer about Trump's executive order known as an EO.
Let's just assume you're dead wrong. How do we get to single rule of citizenship
that is not the rule that we've historically applied, rather than the rule that the EO would have us do.
When Solicitor General Sauer later hedged on whether the administration is committed to abiding by any court ruling, Justice Barrett leaned forward.
Did I understand you correctly to tell Justice Kagan that the government wanted to reserve its right to maybe not follow a Second Circuit precedent, say, in New York, because you might disagree with the opinion?
There are circumstances when it is not a categorical practice.
Justice Kavanaugh asked a series of practical questions.
What do hospitals do with a newborn? What do states do with a newborn?
The federal officials will have to figure that out.
How?
Sauer said they could require documentation showing that the parents are legally in the country. For all newborns, Kavanaugh asked? Replied Sauer, we just don't know. Justice Jackson interjected.
Your argument seems to turn our justice system into a catch me if you can kind of regime where everybody has to have a lawyer and file a lawsuit in order for the government to stop violating people's rights.
When Sauer suggested that litigants could bring class actions instead of individual lawsuits, lawyer Jeremy Feigenbaum, representing the states, responded this way.
I think it's going to hinder the participation in our benefits programs, and I think it's going to produce unprecedented chaos on the ground.
Justice Alito noted that there are 680 district court judges in the country, and if all of them could impose nationwide injunctions, that might produce chaos too. But upon consideration, Alito didn't seem satisfied with Solicitor General Sauer's notion that class actions would be better.
So the answer is that the practical problem would not be solved. And if that's the case, what is the point of this argument about universal injunctions?
Chief Justice Roberts and Justices Gorsuch and Thomas all asked questions skeptical of both sides' positions. So at the end.
Okay, guys. So I hope that gave you a flavor. Totenberg kind of has this mild voice and doesn't appear to make any kind of, she doesn't comment at all on how shocking some of what you just heard was. The idea that the Solicitor General of the United States wouldn't commit to following precedent, and said this to Amy Coney Barrett, who did not just simply let him say that and stop speaking. She pushed him and asked him a second time, incredulously, because let me just say, I'm going to read it to you. Barrett said, essentially, did you hear correctly from Justice Kagan that you would reserve your rights not to follow Second Circuit precedent? And Sauer said it's the general practice regarding precedent. And Barrett responded, this administration's practice, meaning Trump, or the longstanding practice of the federal government. Sauer actually said longstanding. And Barrett said, really? Which was, so that colloquy went on longer. The point here is that the problem with the argument that the Trump administration is making here is, and it was mostly pointed out by Justice Kagan, and I would also say Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the problem here is that they are suggesting that if a future president, meaning Sauer, a future president says, you know what, I don't want anyone to have handguns. So I now have an executive order saying that in 30 days, we are going to, or forget the 30 days, we are going to immediately begin sending federal officials in to confiscate everyone's handguns. And if you resist and get into, into some kind of fight, we will shoot on sight. That's it. And if they went in and said that, what Sauer is suggesting is that there would be no way, and by the way, this would be a clear violation of the Second Amendment as it has been interpreted by the U.S. Supreme Court in many decisions, including like Heller 1, Heller 2, what have you. So I'm simplifying this. Obviously, if they're going in to take a handgun away from a convicted felon who didn't have the right to do it, that's a different issue, right? At any rate, if they said they were going to go do this, what the Trump administration is actually suggesting is that if I, a handgun owner, rushed into the federal district court for the Eastern District of Michigan, which is in Detroit, and brought this case and was able to get a judge there to say, no, that's not okay. What they're suggesting is it would only be as applied to me, maybe, or maybe that injunction would only be as applied to the district in which I'm living. So just that part of Michigan, nowhere else perhaps in the state, and that this future president would be able to continue to go on the administration on its merry way confiscating guns until there is an order. In this case, maybe it's 680 judges, maybe it's only the 93 districts, that everyone has secured the relief for either themselves or the class of people they're representing in their area. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. But the problem is that on the flip side, there's a problem with nationwide injunctions in all instances. I think that Kagan it was Kagan or Sotomayor, this idea that maybe we should think about when an executive order is just so abundantly, clearly unlawful, that there might be in that instance the ability to get a nationwide injunction. Now, here's what I have to say. What's the big deal with the nationwide injunction? When you are doing something when you are trying to change the status quo with an executive order, as opposed to going through Congress and enacting a law that's signed by the president, if you're trying to radically change existing law, or you believe it's been misinterpreted, why not allow for a nationwide injunction in that instance and then let the case get up to the Supreme Court on the merits? And some of the justices might be looking at it that way. Now, let us move on to a couple more things before we have Corey come on the show. I am going to have him, as is the custom, join me for Crazy Town. And so instead, I want to share with you a couple more things. How about this? I don't know if you heard that the top priority of the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, is not the fact that planes are crashing, that there is no safe way to fly into Newark. I mean, even his wife is not flying into or out of Newark, we heard. So instead, what are they doing? We are moving Jesus out of the basement at the Merchant Marine Academy to all the midshipmen. This painting is going back where it belongs. A painting of Jesus up on the walls. As Ron Filipowski, the editor-in-chief over at Midas, said, can we just fix the airports and work on planes crashing? And I guess maybe people don't get it, that the new strategy for the Secretary of Transportation is quite literally thoughts and prayers. And what better way to initiate your thoughts and prayers with a painting of Jesus right on hand? Okay, so what do I have else for you here? I think that I want to share with you here.
You can look at Medicaid cuts.
Oops, there we go. So we've been talking here about how the Republicans are wrongly and misleadingly trying to position what they're doing, the close to or approximately $700 or $800 million in cuts to Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security. It looks like they're concentrated in Medicaid in order to balance the budget on the backs of the American people. 40% of children have health insurance through Medicaid. We've already looked at that pie chart that shows this myth of able-bodied men are the ones who are somehow getting Medicaid. And if we just kick them off, we can save $800 million, right? This idea that they're trying to say it's Medicaid reform, but it's actually cuts to Medicaid. So let's listen to this member of Congress, Jason Smith, who is on the House Ways and Means Committee, actually say the quiet part out loud in his attempt to correct himself.
And then you can look at Medicaid cuts, Medicaid reforms, I should say. These are all things that were right in the middle. And
Medicaid cuts or Medicaid reforms, I should say. I know I should say is just an expression meaning, oops, I made a mistake. But actually, it's more telling than that. I should say, because they have been trained on the bullet points in the language that you're supposed to use. Don't say Medicaid cuts, say Medicaid reforms. Guys, don't fall for it. It is cuts. And with that, I want to bring Corey Frayer of the Consumer Federation of America on stage here. And I want to share with you before he comes up, right? This is Corey looking very, very dapper and important. And you can see the collage on the right. No, I did not steal that from anyone. I had some fun making that myself. The question, our expert here from the Consumer Federation of America, who also advised former SEC chairman Gary Gensler on crypto, also worked for one of my favorite senators who should still be in the Senate, Sherrod Brown. He's going to talk to us on will they cave on crypto? And by they, maybe I mean the Democrats, maybe I mean the Republicans, but I think I mostly mean Kristen Gillibrand and Mark Warner. And you remember Corey, because last week I showed you a video of Corey. This was the Facebook Live or Instagram Live with Bernie Sanders talking through the so-called Genius Act. Now I need to share with you his bio. He's director of investor protection at Consumer Federation of America. And then there's all this yada, 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 yada. And at the very bottom, it says, Corey received his bachelor degree, blah, 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 blah. And the most important part, he resides in Washington, D.C. with his dog, Iggy, and spends his free time as a distance runner and musician. And so I said to myself, where's Iggy? And there's Iggy. Iggy looks so cute. And you know, Iggy could be a rival to our show mascot, Tank the Tortoise. I could not demote Tank the Tortoise, but today, Iggy can be our honorary mascot. And with that, let me bring Corey up to the stage to talk with us about important things like dogs and crypto. Hi, Corey.
Hey, Jen, how are you doing?
I am really good. I know we want to talk about crypto and stuff, but I need to know about, like, in the shot, you've got a guitar. Can you tell us what that guitar is and what your band is? Because I got your dog. Is that Iggy or is that someone else's dog?
No, that is Iggy. He's actually doing Squawk Box this morning, so he's not available. So you just get me. And that is a Telecaster.
That's very funny. You can tell people what Squawk Box is. That's very funny.
It is a CNBC show where a bunch of folks who are basically shilling for the financial industry talk about what stocks you should buy so you can lose money next week.
Amazing. I love it. It's so good. Like touting Enron until the bankruptcy and then boom, shit like that. Okay, sorry. We can use any language you want. So Corey, thank you for all the work you're doing trying to get the word out about what's going on in the Genius Act. And some people probably didn't see that show, and also, unlike us, don't obsess about all things finance. So can you share with us in any way you want what this bill is about, what the Democratic amendment is about? My folks know about cloture and so on. So kind of like however you want to talk about what this bill is, where it's at, and are we going to get a victory here?
Yeah, let me start out by just sort of explaining what the financial instrument, what is the supposed creative, innovative financial technology they're trying to sell the American people here, and that is a thing called a stablecoin. It is a type of crypto, and really all you need to know about it is that it is meant to replace the dollar, and it is a payment just like an electronic payment, just like your direct deposit, just like your bank account, like PayPal or Venmo. Only it's not backed by FDIC insurance. You get no consumer protections, and this bill doesn't provide any consumer protections. And ultimately, what Congress is set up to do with this bill is to allow stablecoin issuers to use our federal payment system, give them accounts at the Federal Reserve, which would allow them to distribute this, fake money more broadly to more consumers. And
wait, I need you to stop there, because everything you're saying is the best I've heard anyone describe this, right? But I want to say, so just to reiterate, you're talking about like a payment system. So if I had on my phone right now, I pay people using Venmo, or I pay checks on my phone from my bank account. This would be another method, as a consumer, I could use to buy things. But what you just said now just set off alarms that these issuers of, so like, I have a credit card bank issuer, or I'm aware of my, I've got Chase Bank and Florence Savings Bank. I know who those guys are. You're not saying the people who create these stable coins are themselves going to be treated kind of like banks, and they'll have a bank account at the Fed, is what you're saying? Holy shit.
Yeah, they'll be treated like banks in the way that they get access to the government infrastructure that we all own, and that the banks use, to make our money system work. But they will not have the regulations of banks. They will not have the consumer protections of banks. Consumers that use them will not have FDIC insurance. So it's a really bad deal for consumers, and it's a great deal if you're one of these stablecoin companies, that wants to trade your monopoly money for real money that has all of those protections.
So we used to talk back around the financial crisis about the language of shadow banking. This sounds like shadow money, right?
It is. It's shadow money. It's private money. As a matter of fact, this kind of thing is exactly why we have banking regulation in the first place. It was Abraham Lincoln who signed the first banking law, the Bank Act. And the reason for that is because we used to have all these competing currencies issued by different banks. There was no federal, law. There was no federal currency used by everyone. And it meant that, your dollar might be worth $1 at one bank, but if you headed out west, if you went to a different state, your dollar might only be worth 50 cents or 75 cents.
Yeah, people aren't aware of that wildcat era. When you look at a green dollar, paper dollar, it says Federal Reserve note. What banks used to do is give you a piece of paper, and I'm simplifying this, Corey, you know better than I. Like if I had some land just sitting around because I inherited, I'm a farmer, and I needed some money to buy seeds or do whatever, I could say, listen, bank, can you give me a loan so I can do that? And they would, they could either give me hard, coins, or they could give me this paper. The paper is just a promise that I can give that promise, that note, like a promissory note, to someone else who knows, okay, Jennifer's giving me this in exchange for seeds. I'll hand her the seeds. I got this piece of paper. And when I show up at her bank, my hope is that they'll give me coins, gold, what have you, worth that value. But the problem, as Corey's saying, is every bank had a different piece of paper. So sometimes, what if I, and also you don't always cash out, right? You trade the pieces of paper around because who wants to carry bags of coins? And like, you could be like the Bank of Wyoming or what, well, I don't even Wyoming. Well, let's use an example. There could be some bank out in Wyoming and it was so far away. People were like, you know what? It says it's worth $1, but it would take me a really long amount of time to get out there. And who the hell knows if this is really a bank? I'm not going to let you exchange that for $1 worth of seeds, Jennifer. If you have that one, maybe you can get 50 cents. They were all discounted. It was a disaster.
No, that's exactly right. And one of the biggest problems was that these banks could go bust. They could go bankrupt. And if they did, all of your paper became worthless. That's the exact same case as these stablecoin companies. If you have a bunch of these stablecoins and that company goes bankrupt, you lose all of your money. It just
and
disappears.
That has happened, right? And so let's talk about the differences bill would make. And before we do that, I want to remind folks that, and I'm simplifying this, I've heard that there, right now, there are different types of stable coins, right? They all claim, oh, we're worth $1. But the way they peg themselves, meaning saying, okay, we're going to, with a US dollar, you can always exchanges for this. What do? If I give them $1,000, some of the stable coins take that money and invest in whatever the hell they want. They could take it to Las Vegas for all I know. They could invest it in Sam Bankman-Fried's company. Who knows? And so when I go to try to convert my on the system stable coin and cash it out, let's say into the banking system, like my real bank, will I or won't I get it? If there's a run on the stable coin, maybe not, right? There are other kinds of stable coins that say, okay, we're not going to do whatever, but we'll do things like, only certain types of investments. And now there's this third type that's supposedly safe because they claim, well, when we take Jennifer's money and Corey's money and everyone's money, we're only going to invest it in things like U.S. Treasury securities and super safe stuff. But that sure as hell sounds like a mutual fund. I came from the mutual fund world, but they're not being regulated. So they want the privilege of saying we're just like a mutual fund. But what are they doing? they say these things, oh, super safe stuff, but they're these repurchase agreements. I don't want to get into the plumbing of this, but okay. So this is the three types. Now, what I want to know, Corey, if we don't pass this law, because you and I don't want Congress to pass this law, stable coins aren't going to necessarily go away, but will they, is passing this law going to, one, make them flourish, two, give them the protection, like you're saying, of the banking system without some of the same restrictions on them and no protections for us? Like, that sounds like what would happen. So, and make it more prevalent. The question is, what is the argument for doing that? Like, if we don't do anything with them, why would stablecoins still exist? I mean, of course, you know that I think these are unregulated securities, but that horse has left the barn. So right now, let's say this bill goes away, never gets enacted. It's not like stablecoins aren't around threatening our system, but why are we safer if we don't bring stablecoins, this form of crypto, this digital currency, into the system? Why would we be safer if we say the door is shut to you?
Yeah, I want to jump back really briefly to a point you made that you don't want this, this isn't popular. Most people don't want to use cryptocurrency. A Pew poll at the end of last year said that 61% of Americans don't trust cryptocurrency, and 81% of Americans, 81% who had dealt with cryptocurrency, don't trust it. This is extremely unpopular. So why is doing something here worse than doing nothing? One of those things I like to point your viewers to is an analyst named Amanda Fisher at Better Markets.
I love Amanda.
She's great.
Wait, stop. I'm on the Better Markets Academic Advisory Board, and I was just talking to Amanda the other day. Now you know, with Simon Johnson. Fancy, right?
Yeah,
okay, and Amanda worked. Yeah, and Amanda worked for Katie Porter. Anyways, we can talk about everyone we know in a moment. But so go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Tell me about Amanda.
No,
go ahead.
No, not at all. It's a great document, and it really gets into the weeds, and it really covers everything.
Okay.
If I could sort of condense that document, the reason this is worse than nothing is because right now, stablecoins are really useless in the financial system. Nobody uses them because they're inconvenient, they're confusing. The technology just isn't good for financial services. And so they haven't taken hold. Now, they claim that this technology is sort of a revolutionary structure, and it's not. It requires the use of the public infrastructure that we have already built, that we have already paid for, our legacy infrastructure. And what this bill does is it hands over access to that infrastructure that we rely on for financial stability, for clearing between banks, for all these payments that we do every day. And it gives them access to that system without requiring that they have the same level of regulation and supervision and capital that a bank would. And we protect this system very, very carefully because it is so critical. We protect the system by having all of these rules for banks, and those rules are not being applied, and yet we're giving away the store in terms of access to the federal payment system.
So I'm going to quote Ralph Nader and say, and essentially these stablecoins are unsafe at any speed.
That's right.
And so we're letting a certain kind of vehicle onto the highways that we have built that's dangerous, leaking gas, that smashes into things and so on. I mean, simplifying it that way. I think the other thing to think about, if you'll go here with this, Corey, is that it's also a bit of a Trojan horse in that they're so hell-bent. How do I back this up? The reason why stablecoin functionality or the existence of it is important for crypto is because, let's say I have a certain amount of money invested in some meme coin and then in some Bitcoin and then some other kind of thing that's not planning to keep any kind of stable value. And these things, as we know, feel like securities and not like coins. Let's face it, those things are actually assets to invest in. And what stablecoin would allow me to do is, let's say I'm like, oh my God, my investment of Bitcoin is now worth $30,000 as if. but I'm nervous and I think it might go down. So I want to sell a bit of it because maybe I need to buy something or pay a car payment or whatever. And when I sell it, where am I going to put it next? So if I can liquidate some of my Bitcoin investment, and let's say it was worth 30, I take 10,000, I can convert it into these so-called stable coins and just keep it there, hold on it until I need to either buy the car or make the payment or whatever. It would then, the idea is, because remember, these Bitcoins aren't part of the banking system, but if the stable coins are, it's really easier for me to move my money out of this illiquid, volatile asset into something that's supposedly stable, and then move it from the so-called stable coin into my bank account. This is exactly what money market funds did for the mutual fund industry. This is what stablecoin would be doing for crypto, right? Isn't that how this is functionally working?
That's exactly right. What stablecoins allow you to do is move and navigate your money through the crypto ecosystem, which, as we've seen, is not compliant with the law in any way. You get no investor protections. You get no consumer protections. And more importantly than any of that, there is very little compliance with money laundering law, with anti-terrorism funding law. And so what this is really useful for is for bad actors, North Korea, Russia, to evade sanctions and move that money through the crypto system, which they can also do almost anonymously. It makes these transactions untraceable. And so last year, you had the Minister of Finance of Russia stating publicly that stablecoins were helping them evade international sanctions to fund their invasion of Ukraine. We know, the FBI knows, that $2 billion of stablecoins and other crypto have been used by North Korea to fund their nuclear missile programs. This isn't just a financial stability issue. It's not just a consumer issue. This is an enormous national security risk. And that is all compounded by the fact that President Trump has his own stablecoin company.
Okay, let's go there. This is where we need to go. So let's pivot there, because I have to tell you, I've had many conversations about crypto and even stablecoin. And when I say many, because I want to talk about Trump, I have spoken with Zeke Foe. I'm sure you know him. Number go up, I feel like is
Number
his book.
Go Up.
Right. I've spoken when I had my show that was called Booked Up, and it was a podcast. I also interviewed, if you can believe it, Michael Lewis, Going Infinite. I also interviewed, who is the guy? I'm forgetting his name. He was an actor on
Ben
television.
McKenzie and Jacob Silverman.
Yes. And so what is his first name? The actor's first name again? Ben, right. And he had a different stage name. So Ben is fabulous. I interviewed him, not his co-author. So I interviewed and I've had many crypto conversations, but I want to say, Corey, you have not just the knowledge, but the ability to speak about this in such a clear way. You may be getting a phone call from Dean Obadala. Do you know him from SiriusXM Progress? He knew I was having you on the show, and he's like, I'm going to poach him as a guest, but you really should be. I don't know if you've already talked on MSNBC about this, but you are so clear, and you really should be not just spreading the information, but the way that you communicate it. But let's talk about Trump now.
So we warned a bunch of analysts and researchers that focus on financial regulation and focus on crypto, who've been very engaged on this issue. We warned months ago, while this was legislation was being considered, that Trump, who already had crypto companies, was going to issue his own stablecoin and take advantage of this legislation that was going to pass. During the Senate banking markup of this bill, so the opportunity for
when was this? Give me the roughly month. What month was that?
That's in February.
Okay, so
we started
very recently. This. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
And during that markup of the bill, in the middle of the markup, news broke that President Trump's company, World Liberty Financial, was going to start issuing a stablecoin with a company called Binance. Now, Binance is the largest crypto company in the world. It is a company where the CEO, whose name is CZ, the CEO spent time in jail for evading money laundering laws. And Trump is now in business with this person. And Trump's SEC canceled, when Trump took over, they canceled a bunch of cases against Binance and CZ for securities fraud.
I can't believe we're living in this timeline, Corey. Let's just take a beat and say, this is not normal also to have a convicted felon in the White House who is seeking out business arrangements. And yet, okay, so this is the backdrop. So as the Senate is marking up, and the markup means, making amendments to whatever in February, he decides, this may go, I might get this. And so that is exactly when he decides to launch or issue his stablecoin with someone who was under investigation, who he conveniently had charges dropped against. Okay, so then what happens?
And then, shockingly, almost half of the Democrats on the Senate Banking Committee ignored Senator Warren's warnings, and they voted for passage of this bill in the Senate Banking Committee.
Who were those? I have testified before a Senate Banking Committee back in the day. You may have been working for Senator Brown then, but they used to be pretty savvy people on the Dem side on that committee who voted to pass this through. It would have gone through anyway because of the Republican majority, but I'm curious who on that committee.
Yeah, Senator Blunt Rochester.
She's new, and she's new to Senate banking then, so she doesn't have the background. Okay.
Yeah. Senator also Brooks, who's also new,
right,
and is a sponsor of the bill. Senator Gallego.
Well, hardly surprises me given the hot water he's in. Yeah, he's going to do whatever the Trump administration wants until they drop the charges against him. Here we are. Okay, and who else?
Senator Warner, who has.
I mean, he's always been this way. Okay. Yeah.
He is just so consistently voted for financial deregulation.
Who is the ranking member of Senate banking right now?
Senator Warren took over after, by the way, after crypto spent $40 million in Ohio to unseat
Brown.
Senator Brown, who used to be the lead Democrat on the banking committee.
So Senator Warren, how did Chuck Schumer give people these appointments? Why would you put these newbies on Senate banking? I mean, I know I'm getting a little bit into inside baseball, but Jesus. I mean, people who have weathered. Go ahead.
Oh, the reason that you put someone in, especially new people, on House Financial Services or the Senate Banking Committee is, it's a place where they can raise a lot of money from financial firms.
Jesus. And this is what happened before in the run-up to the financial crisis. I can't even believe we're doing this again. Okay, so Corey, where do we go from here? So Trump has done this. So now let's go to where we are with the legislation, because I thought this was a done deal. I thought they were going to get to 60, which requires Democratic votes in the Senate, and that they were going to therefore end the debate, meaning get the cloture vote and be able to get that up-down vote they want, which they would win. How in the hell did Warren manage to scare people away from voting for this? And can we maintain the pressure?
Yeah, I think that's one of the best lessons about this experience. And it informs us about everything else that the Democrats could be doing as an opposition party to protect our democracy. So this, as you've said, this bill, it was bipartisan. It's supported by an industry whose political power has grown enormously in the last 2 years. And this was supposedly one of those unstoppable bills that was just going to pass no matter what anyone did. And through the leadership of Ranking Member Warren, through the analysis and research and advocacy that groups like Consumer Federation of America and others do on these issues, raising awareness about the corruption that Trump has been at. $3 billion he's profited from his crypto businesses, much of that from foreign actors who are using it as a way to bribe him. We informed folks. We just did as much outreach as we could. And this supposedly unstoppable bill, when it was put up on the floor, was stopped. Senator Gillibrand, the lead sponsor of this bill, voted against moving forward with it. So
right.
when we fight, we can win. When Democrats fight, they can win. This was supposed to be unstoppable, and it stopped.
It's incredible for a moment, right? And so the question is, what is it going to take for these people to cave, or won't they? And let me ask you one last thing before we do Crazy Town. There was, I would say, I don't want to say performative, but we knew that the amendment that was put forward wouldn't pass, but it drew attention to Trump's corruption. So you can talk about an amendment that Democrats have been trying to add, or at least maybe Senator Warren and others, that specifically would deal with Trump's corruption here.
That's right. A lot of opponents to this bill have been pushing for the bare minimum that we add language that would prevent political dealing in crypto. It would be even better if we didn't pass this bill until the president and his family had divested from all crypto. But this is just the simplest of requirements that we state. It is illegal for the president to use his position of power to benefit from issuing crypto. And Republicans don't want to admit to the corruption. And the sponsors of the bill want to get to yes so badly that what they did was sort of this classic Schumer leadership move.
Oh.
Where they set up, what they were going to do is set up this vote on a bill that was introduced in good faith, introduced by people who really do disagree with Trump's corruption. And what they were going to do is agree with Republicans to move forward with the stablecoin bill that Trump wants, and have a vote on this bill that they knew was going to fail around Trump corruption, so that they could say, hey, look, we tried. Some Democrats voted for that bill, but hey, it failed. And so we just have to take the Trump bill as it stands. It's dishonest. It's so dishonest.
Right. And it's frustrating that he keeps pulling this nonsense again and again. Well, I'm going to need you to come back, Corey, if we lose this battle, and even if we don't, because doing what you do on Consumer Federation of America, there's going to be a lot of in the future investor issues that we're going to face. So I'd love that. And also I probably should get Amanda on here too, and others. So
Sure,
do you mind joining me? You probably don't know that we had this little segment at the end of the show called Crazy Town. Do you mind staying on?
No, I'd love to. And if I could just say really quickly.
Oh yeah, sure.
We've gotten some victories here. We've got the Democrats who support this bill on their back heel. We've got the crypto industry on their back heel. They know we can win this. So if you live in New York, if you live in Arizona, call these senators, bring attention to this issue. They think that they're going to get away with this without being seen. If they know we're watching, we can beat this bill again.
I love that. And we did give the list that Indivisible had up the other day. Mark Warner of Virginia, Kristen Gillibrand of New York. We had Ruben Gallego from, is it New Mexico?
Arizona.
That right? Arizona. The others. We've got Lisa Blunt Rochester, you mentioned, and the other newbie who I have forgotten her name.
Also Brooks in Maryland.
Brooks in Maryland.
Yeah.
Anyone else I'm missing?
Van Hollen, the other senator in Maryland, is a warrior on this. So what is she doing?
You mean warrior, like against it? Yeah.
No, against it.
Yeah. I think that people don't, if you're younger and you're new to this and didn't focus on who the players are here and how devastating this would be, you could be led down a path, and hopefully they're actually seeing what is going on. So the way Crazy Town works is we show something in the news that is batshit crazy, and sometimes the whole day is Crazy Town, but we start with a little music. You do not have to use hand gestures, I promise. Here we go. See, I do my little gest. Your name Iggy?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Is Iggy named after Iggy Pop?
You're exactly right. Yes, he is.
See, okay, so he's too cool for school. Corey is not going to dance to my stupid music, but let's watch this and talk on the other side. Here is Crazy Tim.
Because as you know, we won 3 elections, okay? And some people want us to do a 4th.
Hold on, context. This is Donald Trump speaking to the U.S. troops in Qatar. And he's looking more jaundiced than usual. Let me start at the beginning, and then Corey can comment after.
Because as you know, we won 3 elections, okay? And some people want us to do a 4th. I don't know. We'll have to think about that. You saw the new hat. The hottest hat is, it says, Trump 2028. We're driving the left crazy when you see that. We didn't need that hat, but it's been an amazing period of time.
Corey?
This is one of the scariest things about this bill. They're serious about this. We gotta learn to start taking Trump at his word. And one of the things about this at this bill is that it is going to supercharge the profitability of these crypto firms that have been dumping money into our elections, that are huge supporters of Trump, that are running anti-trans campaigns in their commercials. Right. Like it is a terrible industry that we're going to supercharge. They're going to use that money to push out anyone who's going to push back against the crypto industry. And those are going to be the battleground seats across the country. Senator Gillibrand is the chair of the DSCC, the campaign leadership arm of the Senate. Oh. And she's going to supercharge this industry that is going to spend hundreds of millions against her.
In my experience, capital like this, crazy capital will crush us. And so are we just waiting for the 13-3 bailouts in the future? Or what? I mean, what is the future?
We've already bailed it out. We've already bailed out
Silicon Valley Bank.
It's Silicon Valley Bank. In 2023, we bailed. And this bill is not just a gift to Trump. It's a gift to a company called Circle. And Circle had $3.3 billion of the deposits that supposedly back its stablecoin in uninsured accounts at Silicon Valley Bank. One of the reasons we bailed out SVB was to save the reserves of USDC, Circle's stablecoin. So this isn't officially part of our financial system yet, and we've already had to bail it out for $3.3 billion.
Well, this is how the game works. You privatize the profits and you socialize the losses. Welcome to corruption. Thanks for being here, Corey. This has been great, and have a great weekend.
Thanks so much for having me.
I gotta go.